President Bola Ahmed Tinubu wooed investors during the week, saying that Nigeria is ready to do business. He was speaking to investors on the sidelines of the Summit for New Global Financing in the French capital, Paris. There, Tinubu met with the president of Afreximbank, Professor Benedict Orama, and the president of European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Odile Renaud-Bassot. A statement from the presidency quotes President Tinubu saying that the ongoing reforms in Nigeria, starting with the scrapping of fuel subsidy and the streamlining of the exchange rate, will be sustained for a more competitive economy that attracts foreign direct investments. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu also called for the promotion of unity, stability, and economic justice for all Nigerian citizens. The president made these remarks during a meeting with Nigerians in Paris, France, as part of his visit to the country for the two-day Global Financial Pact Summit. President Tinubu acknowledged the numerous challenges faced by Nigeria, including transportation, electricity, and infrastructure. He emphasized the urgent need for focused attention and swift action to address these critical areas and ensure the well-being of the Nigerian people. The interactive section provided an opportunity for Nigerians in attendance to express their gratitude to the president for engaging in discussions about policies and programs that could contribute to the development of the country. Many who were present shared their thoughts and ideas on how to enhance various sectors back home, highlighting the importance of collaboration between the government and the citizens. In the meantime, President Tinubu commended the African Development Bank for its $520 million investment in specialized agro-processing zones in Nigeria. According to him, the investment will create job opportunities and alleviate poverty in the country. The commendation came during a meeting between President Tinubu and Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, who is president of the African Development Bank, which took place on the sidelines of the Global Financial Pact Summit in Paris. Dr. Adesina highlighted the significance of the specialized agro-processing zones. The Nigerian Labour Congress has, meanwhile, condemned the proposed 40% hike in electricity tariff as insensitive and callous. The labor union says life in Nigeria could become much more difficult due to a barrage of price hikes, including fees in tertiary institutions. In a statement, Nigerian Labour Congress President Joe Ajero urges the federal government to halt the proposed tariff hike for the collective safety of the masses. The NNC argues that there have been increases without notice in violation of statutes. The Central Bank of Nigeria has also declared the removal of cash deposit limitations on domiciliary accounts, saying that account holders can withdraw up to $10,000 per day. In a statement, the Apex Bank stated that this followed a June 14th announcement on new guidelines in the foreign exchange market. A subsequent extraordinary bankers committee meeting was said to have been held on Friday, June 16, to discuss its implementation and implications for the banking public. These policy changes, according to the CBN, aim at promoting transparency, liquidity, and price discovery in the forex market in order to improve supply, discourage speculation, enhance customer confidence, and ensure overall stability. In another development, the Central Bank of Nigeria has issued new regulations mandating financial institutions to gather additional customer information, including social media handles, email addresses, telephone numbers, and residential addresses. This move aims at strengthening the identification process within the banking system. The Apex Bank outlined these requirements in its recently released document titled Central Bank of Nigeria Customer Due Diligence Regulations 2023. The CBN stated that these regulations were established to enhance customer due diligence measures for financial institutions under its regulatory oversight. These are the latest developments within the monetary and fiscal sector in Nigeria. For an overview of all these stories and developments, I'm now being joined by Dr. Muda Yusuf, Director and Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Promotion and Private Enterprise. Dr. Yusuf is also a former Director General of Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Good to see you again, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Thank you for joining us on this day live, the Sunday talk show.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Okay, Dr. Yusuf, I don't need to repeat the stories. I gave an elaborate, extensive summary of some of the major economic issues in Nigeria in the last week. Where do you want to start from? Wherever you choose as starting point is my choice.
Okay, let me start from the home front. The president has undertaken some very important reforms, which many of us have applauded. But we need to be very sensitive to the social outcomes of these reforms. These reforms are fundamental, no doubt. They are inevitable, but the social consequences is something that we need to respond to very quickly. And some of the messaging that is also coming from some agencies of government and also some quasi-government agencies does not seem to reflect the mood, the social conditions of the country. And that, of course, is not good for the administration. First, while Nigerians were still grappling with the challenges of fuel subsidy, transportation costs, the cost of living, and so on, there is this news about the electricity tariff. For me, that is very insensitive. Yes, we may be talking about the fact that the DISCOs or electricity companies are private companies, but they also need to be very sensitive to the social context in which they operate, because we need social stability for any business at all to be able to function. And I think it also behoves on the new administration to ensure that some of these critical agencies of government don't send out, don't give signals to citizens as if they are not sensitive. Yes, a commercial case could be made, but this is not the time to be talking of another hike in electricity tariff. Whatever the government needs to do, I think they have to do, because we don't want to further create more social tension in the economy. Something similar to that also happened with diesel. I learned that there was a decision to impose VAT of 7.5% on diesel at a time when Nigerians were grappling with this shock of the fuel subsidy. When we are talking about high transportation costs, we are talking about high energy costs. Why on earth would anybody give approval that an additional tax of 7.5% be imposed on diesel? For me, this is a contradiction. I listened to what you said, your quotation of the president in Paris when he was addressing Nigerians. He acknowledged the pains that Nigerians are going through as a result of some of these reforms. He also underscored the need for something to be delivered quickly. While Nigerians were waiting for the palliatives to come, we are getting agencies of government and some of these public institutions coming up with additional pressure, additional taxes and things like that. For me, I think we need to be very sensitive in the way we relate to some of these policies.
Okay, Dr.
There's
Yusuf.
also this talk about the customs reviewing his benchmark exchange rates for the computation of import duty. That also has implication for additional costs to be paid on import duty. That for all imports that are coming into the country. How can we be putting that on the table at a time like this? I mean, that runs completely counter to what the president is saying. Then there is this talk about the proposal that there is likely to be a withdrawal of subsidy in tertiary education. That was why we are having this student loan. You know, there's a limit to which the citizens can absorb some of these things. And the citizens have shown an amazing understanding so far. And the labor unions have also demonstrated very good understanding. What we are waiting for is a reciprocation of this understanding by quickly addressing the critical issues of the cost of living, transportation costs, cost of food, and all of that. That is what should follow.
Okay.
So my advice is that, I mean, those in charge of strategy and all of that, of the present administration, should advise all these government agencies to put anything that has to do with review of charges, taxes, they should put them on hold.
Okay, Dr. Yusuf.
While we address these very critical issues of, yes.
Dr. Yusuf, it's good you refer to the president's participation in the Paris summit on the attempt to forge a new global, financial pact. Now, at that conference, President Tinubu met on the sidelines with the president of Afreximbank, met with the president of the Economic Reconstruction and Development Bank of the European Commission, the ERBD, and got commitments in terms of foreign direct investment. And that was based on the explanation that Nigeria is engaged in reforms, fuel subsidy removal, harmonization of the foreign exchange regime, and he got commitments, at least from those two banks. He also met with leaders of other countries who said that Nigeria is turning the bend. Okay, so here you are saying that some of those things may not be in the best interest of the Nigerian people. Nigerians have survived for too long on subsidy. That's what some other economies are saying. So what exactly are you proposing? Because we want foreign direct investment. And the spokespersons to the president say foreign direct investment will come because the world is now embracing Nigeria, and President Tinubu says whoever ignores Nigeria does so at his own peril.
No, please, I don't want to be misunderstood.
Okay.
I am all for these current reforms. I'm actually one of the leading advocates of the reforms that we have, particularly the foreign exchange policy reform and the oil and gas sector reform, which is manifesting in the removal of subsidy. That is very critical. And if you must attract investment into the economy, you must put these very fundamental reforms in place. That is perfectly in order, because that is going to impact a lot on capital inflows, on macroeconomic environment, on investment growth, on income generation. It's going to have a whole lot of impact. But it is one thing to manage the economy well. It's another thing to attend to the social conditions of the people. That is what I'm saying. Because if we have the citizens complaining the way they are complaining, yes, the investors are coming. But first and foremost, we manage the economy for people. Reforms must carry a human face. That is why I'm saying that's why I was relating it to all this decision to increase electricity tariff, decision to impose additional tax on diesel, decision proposal on tuition fees in universities.
Okay,
the decision of the customs to review the exchange rate.
I get your point, Dr. Yusuf.
That is the point I'm making. These things have to go together.
No, I get your point.
But I don't create
Dr.
an
Yusuf,
issue for the administration.
I get your point, Dr. Yusuf. Are you saying that we should replace one form of subsidy with another subsidy? Because you are talking about palliatives, you are talking about electricity, you are talking about school fees hike. Okay, can government make any difference in that regard if it does not introduce another subsidy? Because the orthodox economist
subsidy
argument
itself is not bad.
Uh-huh.
No, subsidy is not bad at all. It depends on what kind of subsidy. If you are subsidizing public education, for instance, I mean, take a census of university undergraduates in public universities. Most of them are from average families. Those from the rich homes, they are either in the private universities domestically or they are abroad. I mean, you have examples all over the place. The average Nigerian, especially the children of the poor that are able to go to university today, they're able to do so because there is heavy subsidy in university education. I'm not saying that is, I mean, we may not be able to sustain that for long. But in this transitional phase, we cannot lump all these things together so that the shock will not be too much. So this is not the time to be talking about that. This is not the time to be talking about electricity tariff review. This is not the time to be talking of import duty changes. So we need subsidy. I mean, go abroad. There's heavy subsidy on transportation. There's heavy subsidy in agriculture. There's heavy subsidy even in education, especially primary and secondary, in many of these advanced economies. So subsidy is not bad, but the kind of subsidy we have had, particularly around the foreign exchange regime and around fuel, the fuel subsidy, are very destructive subsidies. It has very serious damaging effect on the economy. That is the kind of subsidy we don't want. But if you are subsidizing public schools, for goodness sake, most of those who attend public schools, whether primary, secondary, or university, are the children of the average families and the children of even the poor. That kind of subsidy is not bad. That cannot transfer. It's not a subsidy you can transfer. It's not like fuel that you can smuggle out of the country. It's not something that you can bring fake invoices as you have in fuel subsidy. So there are some subsidies that can be effectively targeted. And we need as much of that as possible because of the poverty situation in the country. So there has to be a balance of both social arguments and economic arguments. We should find a balance in these things.
Okay. Doctor, let me ask you. Some of us have been praising President Tinubu. We've been saying, oh, the trip to Paris is a major triumph for Africa. It's a major triumph for Nigeria. And it's an indication that President Tinubu is truly Baba Go Fast and Hurricane Tinubu because of how he came across attending that first summit. And we've been told that at that first summit, this is the second leg of my question in this regard, that the developing countries have now committed about, $100 billion to climate financing. And they have also pledged over $200 billion to support developing countries. Why should we trust the developed countries, the global north, on the issues of advantage for the South? When we saw them in Glasgow, COP26, what did they promised, nothing happened. Even the private sector didn't deliver. We saw them at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Nothing came out of it, really. So what are we dealing with in terms of outcomes? With hypocrisy. And should Nigeria be jubilating that, oh, President Tinubu, having met with critical stakeholders, will get the foreign direct investment that we are looking forward to? Are we not, as Africans, in the vortex of global hypocrisy?
Well, there are two issues in this. First is the issue of climate finance. Of course, I agree with you. Most of the climate finance commitments that were made under the previous COP26 and the rest of them, there has been no significant commitment on the part of the developing nations. And this is part of the climate justice or inequity that we are dealing with as developing countries. Because the bulk of the emissions are coming from the advanced countries. The bulk of the damage and destruction to lives and property, welfare of the citizens, loss of lives, the bulk of it is happening in the underdeveloped countries or developing countries. So, of course, there is a great issue of injustice here, and the commitment they have not lived up significantly up to the commitment of the $100 billion climate finance commitment annually. Very weak commitment. Unfortunately, the United States is even the biggest culprit. We have seen some traction in terms of performance with Japan, with Germany, with some other, France, those three countries. They have performed fairly well in terms of their commitment. But for UK and particularly United States, one of the participants at the Paris summit raised the issue that where they were contributing and spending close to $100 billion on Ukraine, they are not showing any serious commitment to this climate finance. And to make matters worse, even most of those finance are loans. They are not grants. Most of it are loans, which also have to be repaid back. And part of the agenda that the developing countries have put on the table is about debt relief, debt cancellation, and all of that, partly because of the challenges that the climate change has inflicted on the economies. There was no serious takeaway from the area of debt relief and all of that. Only this renewed commitment that, okay, they will provide this, provide that, most of which are loans, and for some of the countries, there's even no serious commitment. Of course, the World Bank committed to, suspending the payment of loans, not cancellation. For new loans, that is what they said. So all the outstanding loans still have to be paid. So there's a big issue around even some of these global financial institutions, the way they are responding to the challenges of climate change and the effect it's having on developing economies, particularly from the point of view of climate finance.
Okay, Dr. Yusuf, 2 more questions and we are done. This question I'm going to ask you. The CBN is saying that in line with Know Your Customer provisions, bank customers, depositors in deposit money banks must now provide their social media accounts, their telephone addresses, and all the other requirements. But the curious thing is about social media accounts: email, Instagram, Facebook, Telegram, and all of that. I don't know whether birth certificate is included in that. Do you think that this is a good idea to check terrorism, to check money laundering? And I hope we will not get to a point where banks will say, well, you bring your mother's marriage certificate to make sure that you are not the product of an illicit affair for you to be able to bank with the system in Nigeria. What do you think?
Well, I think this is most inappropriate, if you ask me. Because before you open an account, there's a KYC that they normally do. That is Know Your Customers. You give all the information and all of that. You already have the NIN. If you don't have an NIN, in fact, there was a time they threatened to close accounts that are not traceable to any national identification number. We all know the kind of commotion and crisis that led to. And they have all this information already. So I don't know what they want to do with the social media handle. How many people have this? We're in an economy where the literacy level is extremely so high. We're in an economy where we are talking about financial inclusion. We want to bring more people into the financial system. Over 30 million people don't have bank accounts. And we are talking about how we can bring them on board. Where do you want them to get all the social media handle information? And we have a huge informal sector. Go to Balogun, go to Kiarin, go to some of these big markets in the north. People controlling billions in terms of their turnover, they don't have all this information. Are we now going to shut them out of the banking system? I think issues like this, I think we have other units of government that has a responsibility to deal with some of these things. We have the Financial Intelligence Unit. Their responsibility is to monitor transactions because these things have to be intelligence-driven. You can't be chasing everybody all over the place. Just as you have in the airports, you land in the airport, there's a desk permanently for DSS. I mean, why should that be? And you see all sorts of characters, even without uniforms, hanging all sorts of ID cards. These things are very embarrassing. So it has to be intelligence-driven.
Okay, Dr. Muda Yusuf.
So this, for me, is what needs to happen. You can't be throwing another confusion into the space, asking everybody to go and look for social media handle. I mean, how do you want to achieve that?
Dr. Muda Yusuf, final question. President Tinubu says Nigeria is ready for business and that it will be perilous for the global community to ignore Nigeria. Are we ready for business in Nigeria?
We are ready. I believe we are ready. Because one of the obstacles, major obstacles to the inflow of capital into this economy was the foreign exchange policy under MFLA. It was such a terrible policy that has made it extremely difficult to attract foreign investment or attract foreign portfolio investors. This economy has a lot of opportunities, most of which even some of us that are sitting here may not even know exist. But it takes entrepreneurs with very sharp eyes to identify these opportunities. So once we remove all these obstacles to capital flows, which is one fundamental thing that has taken place, there are opportunities here. This is a market of over 200 million people. This is a market with very good demographics. You know? So there's a lot of opportunities in terms of human resources, in terms of natural resources, across all sectors of the economy. So I agree perfectly with what President Tinubu has said. The opportunities are here, but we need to complement whatever we are doing by ensuring that we continuously improve on the investment environment. I talked to you about the airport. You travel, and once you land in Murtala Mohammed Airport, you will be ashamed. The toilets don't function, the lifts are not working, all manner of people are carrying all sorts of ID cards, they are not wearing uniforms. So all these kind of things are also not good for attracting investment. Because that's like your front office, like your customer-facing apparatus. It doesn't give a good impression. Then, of course, some of these regulatory issues, regulatory agencies and all of that, those things we have to also improve within the framework of the investment climate issues. But that is work in progress. But in terms of opportunity that we present, in Africa, I think we present the best opportunities for investment.
Okay, on that note, I would like to thank you very much, Dr. Muda Yusuf, for joining us on This Is Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News.